Ever heard of Joanna the Mad? Today, we're diving into one of history's most heartbreaking and controversial royal stories. Was she truly mad, or was she a brilliant queen systematically destroyed by the men she trusted most? Let's unravel the tragic tale of Joanna of Castile. Born in 1479 to the legendary Catholic monarchs, Isabella I of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon, Princess Joanna was destined for a life of duty. She was intelligent, passionate, and multilingual, receiving the finest education a Renaissance princess could dream of. Her parents had grand ambitions, using their children's marriages as political chess moves to forge alliances and encircle their rival, France. For Joanna, this meant a journey to the Low Countries to marry Philip, Duke of Burgundy, known to history as Philip the Handsome. At just 17, she was sent away from her sunny Spanish home to a foreign court. Reports say their first meeting was electric. They were so captivated by each other that they demanded to be married immediately, skipping all the formal ceremonies planned for the next day. It sounds like a fairy tale romance, right? Well, this fairy tale was about to turn into a nightmare. The passionate connection that sparked their marriage soon became a source of intense torment for Joanna. Philip was a notorious womanizer, and his constant infidelities deeply wounded her. Joanna, raised in a court that valued fidelity, was consumed by jealousy. Her public outbursts and desperate attempts to keep Philip by her side were seen as scandalous and unqueenly. But was this madness, or the understandable reaction of a deeply betrayed and isolated young woman in a foreign land whose entire world was her husband? The court of Burgundy, far more liberal than Castile's, simply labelled her as hysterical and difficult. This reputation would follow her, and her enemies would use it to their advantage. Then, a series of unforeseen tragedies completely altered Joanna's destiny. Her only brother, her older sister, and her sister's young son all died unexpectedly. Suddenly, Joanna, the third daughter, was the heir to the vast and powerful kingdoms of Castile and Aragon. This wasn't just a title, it was a target on her back. In 1504, her mother, the formidable Queen Isabella I, passed away. In her will, she named Joanna as her successor to the throne of Castile. But there was a catch, a clause that would seal Joanna's fate. Isabella stated that if Joanna was unwilling or unable to rule, her father, Ferdinand, should govern in her name. This was the opening Philip and Ferdinand needed. Both men craved the power of Castile, and Joanna was the only thing standing in their way. Joanna and Philip returned to Spain to claim her throne. The journey itself was a disaster, plagued by storms that seemed to mirror the turmoil in her life. Once they arrived, a bitter power struggle erupted. Philip, backed by the Castilian nobility, who were tired of Ferdinand's Aragonese influence, managed to outmaneuver his father-in-law. He and Joanna were declared King and Queen of Castile. For a brief moment, it seemed Joanna might finally get her chance to rule. But Philip had no intention of sharing power with his wife. He began isolating her, spreading rumors of her mental instability to justify his control. Then, in 1506, just months after becoming king, the seemingly healthy 28-year-old Philip died suddenly, likely from typhoid fever. Joanna was devastated, plunged into a profound grief. Her husband, the source of both her greatest joy and deepest pain, was gone. It is this period that cemented her nickname, Juana la Loca, Joanna the Mad. History, written by her enemies, tells us a morbid tale that a grief-stricken Joanna refused to leave her husband's coffin, traveling across the Castilian countryside with his embalmed body for months, ordering the casket to be opened so she could gaze upon his face. This is the image that has defined her for centuries. But let's look closer. The reality is more complex and far more political. Traveling with a royal casket was not entirely unusual. More importantly, Joanna was pregnant with their sixth child. She was also a queen, and as long as her husband's body was with her, it was a potent symbol of her legitimacy and that of her unborn heir. She was trying to secure her son's inheritance and protect her own right to rule from her ambitious father, Ferdinand, who was already marching back to seize control. Her mad procession was likely a desperate, strategic move by a cornered queen to rally support and assert her authority. Was it eccentric? Yes. But was it insane, or was it a calculated political act twisted by her father's propaganda machine to paint her as unfit to rule? Ferdinand wasted no time. Citing his late wife's will and the widespread rumors of Joanna's instability, he returned to Castile and declared himself regent. He then did the unthinkable. He had his own daughter imprisoned in the royal convent of Santa Clara in Tordesillas. He took her youngest child, Catherine, to be confined with her, but he sent her heir, the future Emperor Charles V, to be raised in Flanders, far from his mother's influence. For the next decade, Queen Joanna was a prisoner, locked away from the world she was born to rule. She was the rightful Queen of Castile, yet she had no power, no freedom, and no voice. Her letters, begging for help and proclaiming her sanity, were intercepted. Her jailers were instructed to keep her isolated and compliant. All news from the outside world was filtered, and her reality was completely controlled. When Ferdinand died in 1516, you might think Joanna would finally be freed. But her own son, Charles, proved to be just as ruthless. He arrived in Spain to claim his inheritance, not as regent, but as king, ruling jointly with his mother in name only. He visited her once at Tordesillas, securing her signature to legitimize his power. And then he left her there, a prisoner, in the same castle. Charles needed his mother's royal authority to rule, but he didn't want the actual woman. It was the ultimate betrayal. For Charles, his imprisoned mother was a political tool, a symbol of legitimacy he could use while keeping the real person locked away. Joanna would spend a staggering 46 years confined in that bleak castle in Tordesillas. She outlived her husband, her father, and most of her siblings. She was Queen of Castile for over half a century, but she never truly ruled. She was a monarch in name, but a prisoner in reality, a pawn in the games of the men who were supposed to protect her. So we have to ask the question again. Was Joanna of Castile truly mad? It's undeniable she suffered from what we would likely diagnose today as severe depression, triggered by betrayal, grief, and isolation. But the narrative of madness was a weapon, expertly wielded by her husband, her father, and her son to usurp her power and seize her throne. They systematically stripped her of her agency, her children, and her freedom, all while profiting from her royal bloodline. Her story is a chilling reminder of how easily a powerful woman's reputation could be destroyed in an age when ambition and gender roles collided. Joanna was a queen bound by duty, betrayed by deception, and ultimately broken by the people she should have been able to trust the most. Her tragedy lies not in her supposed madness, but in the calculated cruelty of those who confined her to a lonely room, turning a queen into a ghost in her own kingdom. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the tragic life of Joanna of Castile. If you found this story as fascinating and heartbreaking as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next journey into history. See you next time.